Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, the Labor spokesman, I think, gave a speech about the economy he wishes existed, with no growth, no jobs, rising inequality, and government finances going through the floor. But I would suggest that he doesn't follow his own advice. His own advice was, don't look at the numbers, look at reality. Well, of course, reality, according to him and the Labor Party, is reality on planet Labor, where numbers don't make any difference whatsoever. Of course, if he looked at the numbers, he'd see that for a party that's campaigning for work, there were 80,000 new jobs in the last year. Participation rate in this economy, that is the proportion of working age New Zealanders who see themselves as being in the labour market, is the highest ever. There's never been more New Zealanders who feel that they can access the labour market. Never been more New Zealanders more confident that they can participate in this economy. That's right. And that's what I mean, Mr Speaker, about the opposition giving the speech about the economy they wish they had. In fact, New Zealand is looking at a fairly unique opportunity over the next few years, and that is sustained growth for a period of over 3% for a period of 3 to 5 years, when we've already had, over the last couple of years, growth around 2.5 to 3%. Now that's pretty unusual, actually. So it's the opportunity for continued business investment that builds our capacity to be more productive and produce more income, and for households, the opportunity for moderate but consistent wage and income increases. The opposition spokesman said last year half of all New Zealanders didn't get a pay rise. Well, that's absolutely typical. Every year about half of New Zealanders don't get a pay rise, if only because, well, last year the nurses didn't get a pay rise. Why? Because their collective agreement was negotiated to cover 2 or 3 years. In any given year, that's how it works. But of course, what they do look forward to is the opportunity for consistent, even if moderate, pay increases year after year. And that's what this economy has been delivering, and it's what this economy will continue to deliver. And the conditions for that sustained economic growth have been, in some respects, surprising. That is, as there's been more work in the economy, the labour supply has shown itself to be remarkably responsive, both through migration, through New Zealanders not leaving for Australia, and for people, particularly women and older people, counting themselves now as part of the workforce where previously they weren't. Another condition is low inflation and lower interest rates for longer, a set of conditions we didn't really expect, but we've been importing low inflation from the world economy. That is good for New Zealand households, even if it makes it a bit tougher for the New Zealand government to balance its books. There is one significant imbalance that's been building up in this economy, and that of course is the Auckland housing market. Not the rest of the country. The other 2/3 of our housing markets, with some partial exception in Christchurch, are actually relatively stable, if not becoming more affordable. And the House has discussed many times the action the government is taking to deal with increasing supply in Auckland. Mr Speaker, it was something of a milestone today for the government accounts to show a surplus in January. For the year to January, back in 2010, our deficit was 9% of GDP, around $18 billion in the red. In the last month, we just got to surplus. We've yet to see whether we'll have one for the full financial year. But what it indicates is that we're in the zone. That's right. The combination of a growing economy and good expenditure management has meant that, having largely paid for the Christchurch earthquakes, although not completely, and that may affect our surplus this year, more costs coming through in Canterbury, and having survived a recession, our government finances are headed in the right direction. But, Mr Speaker, what matters more than that actual number is the significant changes going on in the management of government expenditure. Because we've taken a view that the best way for government to control its costs is to do its job properly, and that is to effectively change the lives of people who are dependent on government, either for their income or for other support that they need. So we're moving the budget process to a strong focus on people and populations and communities and families, and not on government departments. So, for example, the way we think about making progress with educational achievement is to focus on the children and families and the difference that better educational achievement will make to the course of their lives, not on the latest bright idea from the Ministry of Education. And this approach is most advanced in the case of welfare, where the forward liability calculation of welfare has yielded a huge wealth of information about our beneficiary population that we simply didn't have before. When we took over from the previous Labor government, we saw a system awash with cash and complacency, where everyone was focused on spending more money as the way of showing that they cared. Whereas now, the measure of whether we care is whether we change the life direction for instance, a young child in government care through Children Young Persons Service, for instance, or whether we can, with a 7-year-old who can't read, get them to where they can pass level 2 NCA, or when we lock someone up in prison, as we should when they've committed a serious offence against the community, that when they come out we can reduce the chance of recidivism from what it was at 60%. 60% of people leaving prison reoffended within 2 years, and a lot of them ended up back inside at $115,000 a year. Pretty reckless failure if you don't do anything about it. So, Mr Speaker, this strong focus on the quality and the impact of our expenditure on real people, rather than on big numbers that government agencies can throw around as a measure of effectiveness, that strong focus is now gradually working through into the system, and actually is one of the reasons we've got to surplus.
That's right.
The government publishes 10 results. They're on the Beehive website, and some of them are pretty hard stuff, like reduction in child violence.
That's right.
Whoever thought that was an easy problem? But what it's driving is a much more focused, effective approach from government departments, because we know that the endless demand for more family violence programs, which are quite expensive, questionable effectiveness, that will just continue endlessly. Politicians in election campaigns will say, we'll spend more on family violence. Well, actually, you should be getting up to say, we'll be spending less on family violence because there's less family violence.
That's right.
We'll be spending less on fixing educational failure because there's less educational failure. We'll be spending less on crime and law enforcement because there's less crime. And that is where the lazy, complacent Labor Party haven't moved one bit from when they were in government. Every measure this government takes in that respect they oppose. The changes in state housing. We want to have less serious housing need, but the Labor Party is opposing what are quite significant changes in how it works. So, Mr Speaker, I'm proud to support this budget policy statement. It sets out a clear direction for an economy that is showing sustainable growth, which can deliver better incomes for households right across the income range over the next 3 or 4 years. And it also indicates the increasing focus on the effectiveness of spending with some quite new tools for government, which mean that over the next, not just the next year or two, but over the next 10, 20 years, governments will be able to contain government expenditure because we do our job properly by changing people's lives for the better.